watching the mystical green beanie.
Hey, what's going on, dudes and dudettes? I am the mystical green beanie, and today I'm gonna do a pitch for a Wonder Woman video game because, why not? You know, this is something that I've wanted to do for a while now, but could never fully wrap my brain around. Funny enough, coming up with an idea for a Superman game was far easier than this. So part of me does want to ease up on DC for not even attempting to make a Wonder Woman game, since their last attempt at a Superman game was in 2006, and their last good Superman game came out in 2002. That and the fact that, well, pop culture doesn't really seem to care about Wonder Woman outside of Linda Carter and maybe Gal Gadot. Which sucks, because I feel like Wonder Woman is actually a really cool character. But she's just burdened with constant retcons and reboots, and on top of that, she doesn't really have any iconic storylines from the comics that permeate pop culture like Batman or Superman, despite the fact that she does have really cool stories that are of that caliber in the comics. But that's a video in and of itself. But yeah, as for today, I'm going to give you some ideas for what I feel would make for a great game for Diana Prince, aka the Princess of Themyscira, aka the Warrior of Peace, aka the Warrior of Truth. Honestly, I don't remember which one it is these days. DC keeps changing it. But yeah, no, this is a video game pitch for Wonder Woman. Enjoy. So starting off with the controls, I'm going to use the PS4 controller as a template because that's the latest system that I own. So in order to move Diana, you toggle the L3 bumper, and in order to move the camera, you toggle the R3 bumper. You can jump, charge jump, glide, and dodge using the X button. Pressing square will allow you to attack enemies with your lasso. Meanwhile, triangle will allow you to attack enemies with an alternate short-ranged melee weapon. And circle will act as your grapple button. As for the L2 bumper, that will be your block button, while the L1 bumper is the button that you would use to aim your camera for projectile attack. You can use R2 as a special attack, but more on that later, and your R1 bumper will be used to switch melee weapons. Finally, you have the D-pad, which will allow you to use items and other magical charms that you will acquire during gameplay to aid you in combat. Alright, so with the control scheme out of the way, let's talk about combat. So, as I mentioned, you can perform attacks with your Lasso of Truth by pressing square. You can also string together various combat combos based off the rhythm of how often you press square. And the lasso combat would work very similarly to, that of the Blood Whip in the Red-Headed Stepchild installment of the Castlevania series. You can also use your lasso to pull enemies towards you by pressing and holding the L1 bumper and pressing square once you've locked onto an enemy. However, tapping square will simply bring your enemy towards you and stun them temporarily. Meanwhile, double tapping it will bring them in for a powerful close combat strike, and pressing and holding it will swing enemies around and around and around, eventually throwing them into something or someone, similar to how Spider-Man will swing enemies around in the majority of Spider-Man games that we've seen thus far. When it comes to your alternate melee weapons, like your sword, your spear, and your dual-wielding battle axes, these weapons can be equipped and used by pressing the triangle button. And when it comes to combat, the same rules as I listed for the lasso combat apply here as well. And you can alternate between your lasso and your alternate melee weapons by pressing square and triangle in combat. And doing that can boost your XP points. And switching alternate melee weapons is easy. Like I said in the control layout, all you have to do is tap R1 to cycle through your options. And as I mentioned previously, circle will allow Diana to grapple enemies and attack them with whatever melee weapon that you have equipped at the moment. And if you don't have a melee weapon equipped, then you'll just perform a traditional Greek wrestling maneuver on your enemy. You can also do aerial attacks by pressing X, then tapping either the square or triangle button, and you would be able to dodge enemy attacks by double tapping X, while both on the ground and in the air. There would also be a counter system in this game where, during combat sections, close combat enemies will attack you with melee weapons, and you can counter their attacks by attacking them with a melee weapon of your own, which temporarily stuns them. Now, in this game, there'd be an adrenaline meter called the Amazonian Rush, or something. I don't know, I'm not a marketing guy. I'm sure someone else could come up with something way cooler than that. But yeah, no, this will be a meter that would allow you to do one of two things. A, you'd be able to unleash bone-crushing explosive special moves by pressing R2 in any combination of square, triangle, or circle. Or B, you could hold down your block button, which is L2, and tap the R2 bumper, sending you into a full demigod mode, like Diana could during her run under the Brian Azzarello and Cliff Chang New 52 series, which I've already reviewed. It's on the channel, and you should definitely check out both my review and that series. Hopefully you won't be disappointed by either. And her demigod mode would give her a temporary increase in strength as well as a health boost, very much like the Spartan Rage in God of War or the Double Trigger in Devil May Cry. Last but not least, we would have magical items that you can use in combat, like the Eye of Medusa, which turns surrounding enemies to stone, Chip of Wood from Apollo's old bow staff, which calls down a rainstorm of flaming arrows, the Ring of Gygus, which will allow you to temporarily become invisible, Moly, an herb which will, temporarily protect Diana from spells, the Betilus, which is a stone that can replenish health, alongside, many other mystical items that you'll come across in the game. And within the game, there would, of course, be various enemy types, most of whom would be basic enemy types who come in the form of undead soldiers named Vrikolacus. And they would be soldiers from every era throughout human history. There'd be basic close combat Vrikolacus who use swords and bayonets and battle axes and stuff like that. Then there'd be projectile variants who use guns and bows and arrows and slings and mini cannons and weaponry of that nature. And then there'd be Vrikolacus who are capable of flight. There would also be various other creatures from Greek mythology, such as harpies, who would be tougher variations on flying Vrikolacus, centaurs, cyclopses, satyrs, and large undead soldiers would act as brutes in this game. Witches, wizards, and spellcasters would also be in this game, and their primary role is to make other enemies around you more powerful, resurrect enemies that you've already slain, or hex Diana in combat, affecting her health, abilities, weapons, and in some cases, depending on the spellcaster's power, her demigod mode. Boss battles would also be a major feature in this game, and Wonder Woman would have to face down against the Cerberus, Scylla, Aphros and Bethos, an undead Hercules, Hades, Athena, Apollo, Hermes, Gaia, and many more, before ultimately coming face to face with the main villain of the game, the Firstborn, who I will talk about a little later. Now, moving on to level progression and environments, this game would not be open world. In fact, it'd be a linear narrative-based game in the same vein as Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions, Uncharted, or The Force Unleashed, if anyone remembers that game besides me. There would be various locations and environments spanning from Themyscira, Paris, Virginia, London, as well as the catacombs of London, Germany, Egypt, Hades, Mount Etna, Olympus, as well as a few other locations. These environments, while linear, would also be large enough to explore and find different items like old treasures or trinkets that can be retooled and used to upgrade Diana's armor and weapons. As for traversal throughout the environments, the first thing I want to establish is that this is a version of Wonder Woman who can't fly. Mainly because I just don't like the idea of Wonder Woman flying, especially since she has an invisible jet, but yeah. Anyways, she instead can jump really, really high and really, really far. And this would be great for certain areas where the player would need for her to jump to and from different platforms. And again, you can jump by pressing X, and you can charge jump by tapping and holding X. You can also glide using an upgrade that would be available in later levels of the game, which can be done by pressing and holding the X button. And the gliding would be a lot like Dante's Angelic Glide from DMC Devil May Cry. You would also need to use the lasso for certain areas in the game, which would require you to pull down damaged structures or put yourself across bodies of water while you're on a platform and grab things that may be out of reach. And this can be done by aiming your camera and pressing square to latch onto highlighted areas that you can interact with. Yanking things towards you as easy as pressing square once. But pillars or crossing bodies of water, you'd have to repeatedly tap square to get yourself from point A to point B. As for the story in the game, it would be an adaptation of the Brian Azzarello and Cliff Chang and Tony Atkins run of the character from the New 52, with a little bit of Greg Rucka's Hikieta and George Perez's run thrown in there as well. The game would open on a farm in rural Virginia with Hera, the Queen of Olympus, awakening these creatures and ordering them to kill the woman inside of the house on the property, whose name is Zola. However, the god Hermes appears to protect Zola, and he tells her to invoke the Hikieta. He transports her to London with one of his teleportation feathers, where she finds herself in the bedroom of Diana Prince aka Wonder Woman, who by now is an established superhero in the DC universe. After invoking the Hikieta, Wonder Woman vows to protect Zola at all costs, and they use the feather of Hermes to travel back to her home in Virginia. This is the part of the game where we get the tutorial and Wonder Woman fights the centaurs and wins, because she's Wonder Woman. And after this, Diana takes Zola to Themyscira to keep her hidden, but she's soon discovered by the goddess Strife, who mind controls a group of Diana's Amazonian sisters, forcing you to fight your fellow Amazons, and ultimately Strife, who's the first boss of the game. And from there, it's revealed that Zeus has gone missing, and not only is Zola pregnant with the child of Zeus, which is, why she's under attack from Hera in the first place and needs protection, but we also find out that Diana is one of the children of Zeus, and her birth from clay was a smokescreen to protect her from the wrath of Hera. This revelation causes a rift between Diana and her mother, as well as the other Amazons, and from this point on, the rest of the game is just you protecting Zola from other gods who want to kill Zola, and meeting up with other demigod children of Zeus, and battling the gods as well as creatures from Greek mythology. And this is where we're introduced to the main villain of the game. So there's a guy named the Firstborn, and he's, the firstborn child of Zeus and Hera, and he's this monstrous giant who wants to rule over Olympus now that Zeus has gone missing. And he wants to kill all of the other gods and demigods, since he was never shown the love of his father's kingdom, yet his other bastards were. And we find out that the reason Zeus went missing in the first place was because he knew the prophecy of the Firstborn coming to Olympus and reigning terror before ultimately being bested by an Amazonian warrior, ushering in a new era for Olympus. So Zeus tricked the Firstborn into coming to Olympus by disappearing, knowing that he would see this as an opportunity to take his rightful place as the new king of the gods, and Wonder Woman would be there to defeat him. And as it turns out, Zola's baby would have been the reincarnation of Zeus all along. And he was just waiting the whole ordeal out until everything played in his favor, and all the senseless death, all the loss that everyone experiences in the narrative, everything and everyone that Diana loses along the ride, was all a part of a long con by Zeus in order to protect his own self-interest. Because he's Zeus, and that's just what he does. Finally, I just wanted to talk about some of the alternate costumes in the game. So, unlike other games where you just have other costumes, in this, you'd actually be able to customize Wonder Woman to your own liking by using different materials that you pick up along your journey and adding them to your wardrobe. Character customization would work almost exactly like it does in games like Injustice 2 and God of War, where you can swap out different articles of clothing and armor to make her look however you want her to look. But yeah guys, that's my idea for a Wonder Woman game. Does this sound like something you'd like to play? If it ever existed? Let me know down below in the comment section. Also, if you like this video, hit the like button, share, support the channel, and if you want to see more content like this, all you have to do is subscribe. I'm the Mystical Green Beanie, thanks for watching, and as always, until next time, adios nachos, adios.
Show me what you got.